Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 133. The nation's championship plans are abandoned, Folau falls foul of more of the rugby community, and Eddie announces his World Cup training camp squad. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. We're with you again. Another episode. Just made it in time again, but that's the important thing. And lots to talk about this week. There've been some interesting updates in this lead up to the World Cup. So to discuss it all with me, as always, Mr. Wood. Hi Dan, how's it going?
Yeah, okay, mate. Okay, I have to start with a slight confession, I must admit. So I feel that as people, you know, we do our pod, which we enjoy doing, and we appreciate all the listeners. But I think the listeners then have a right to know about us. And to my shame, I've got to admit this to our listeners. Please don't stop listening as a result, because I apologise. But I'm enjoying Love Island.
Mate, of course. Of course.
Have you seen that?
Are you a Love Island a newbie?
I am a fair newbie. Heather keeps watching it. I'm not watching that shit. And now I'm watching it like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Love Island got amazing like 3 years ago, and now everyone's hooked. It's just weird, but can't be helped.
That new bird who's gone in there, she is so hot. I would sell my mum to a North Korean labour camp just to be punched in the face by her.
I mean, to be fair, you'd do that to any female with a pulse, so...
Well, yeah, I know, but she's towards the top of the list at the moment.
Fair enough. Well, that was great insight. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks. No, you're welcome. But I apologise to the listeners. I know there's still people out there who are haters.
No, everyone's a lover of the old Love Island.
Am I just 3 years behind?
Right, bottom line, Dan, it is what it is. So.
Yeah. But let's go rugby. Let's look at rugby.
Let's turn our attention to what's going on. So, yeah, obviously... Big news is the England training squad, and we're going to come on to that as probably the main part of this. But before we get there, a couple of things just to mention. So the first thing is that obviously the Nations Championship, we've been hearing about this for months now, a way to get the top teams playing each other more regularly, the way to get more international sides playing against the top teams in order to... just involve more teams, and with I guess the goal being that the World Cup can become a bigger event in the future. Plans have been abandoned.
This is a bit weird. That caught me off guard. I was under the impression that people had kind of bought in, that they were just going back tweaking some changes. And
that's what I thought.
For it to suddenly go from that to be abandoned, I mean, I'd get it if they came and said, look, there's no agreement being made this time. We need to look at proposals, but they've basically just said, "Nah, we're not doing that now."
Well,
what
it
a
sounds
colossal waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, they have said, to be fair, they have said we're not just kind of giving up. I think the plan is to go away and just kind of restructure something and come back to the table and start the process again, you know, and try and meet all the requirements. I think the main issue, and from what I read, it was Ireland and Scotland were two of the sort of the least keen. And they needed to get everyone to agree. And it was because of the relegation promotion issue. And it wasn't so much that they were concerned, you know, immediately you hear that and you think, oh, you know, what, they're worried they're going to get relegated. But I don't think it's that. It was that they were basically saying that the second division just wasn't structured well enough. It wasn't strong enough. So it's all well and good putting all this effort into creating that sort of that top tier. But for this to work, you need a strong second division if you're going to have relegation and promotion. Otherwise, it'll be like the Premiership, or you know, where the Championship teams, most of them simply aren't capable of being in the Premiership, even if they're good enough, because of all the other requirements. So that was the main issue, which I kind of get. It's a shame, particularly for some of the nations who are lower down the table. Because obviously this would have been a great opportunity for them to get a lot more experience playing the top teams. And yeah, in principle, I quite like, you know, the idea that the Six Nations, that's not going anywhere. That's just how the sort of the top Six Nations in the Northern Hemisphere, that's how they play each other. Likewise, the Championship, it's how the top nations in the Southern Hemisphere kind of play each other. And then it just ensures that the games are more evenly spread out in the autumn and the summer. But So yeah, I hope they come up with something that works, because I think it would be good to just, apart from anything else, as lovers of the game, we want to see more international rugby, because unlike with football, I think international rugby is the pinnacle of the sport, whereas in football doesn't seem to be the case in quite the same way.
I do. I don't really know what to think about this one. It just, to me, it's just like, oh, right, all right, well, that was pointless. It is a shame, because especially, and the main thing that I want to see is Fiji getting plenty of time to play together, train together, because that team could be absolutely incredible.
Well, and likewise with the USA, to be fair.
Yeah.
The amount that they've come on in the last 3 or 4 years. We were saying not that long ago we thought it would be 2 World Cups before they were ready to compete, but I think they're a team not to be underestimated at any time. I don't think they're quite there yet, but
England will beat the USA this World Cup, no doubt.
I agree, but that's because England are going to beat everyone because they're winning it. Remember,
of course.
But it wouldn't come as a complete, as a total sort of surprise. Like when Japan beat South Africa, it shocked everybody. I don't think it would be as much of a shock if the USA beat France, for example.
Just because of what France can do.
Maybe that's exactly what it is. Maybe it's just because we know that France have the capabilities to, and this is obviously completely ignoring what England did against Scotland in the Six Nations, but France have the ability to completely implode. But yeah, I think the key thing is just not to underestimate them. And I think when we come to discuss, because it's not going to be today, but when we come to discuss, Pool C, our pool for the World Cup, and the teams that are in it, and the games we're going to be looking ahead to, I think it'll be an interesting one, because I think suddenly what looked 6 months ago like a fairly simple pool is starting to look a little tougher.
Yeah.
But anyway, that is to be discussed when we cover that off in the coming weeks. The next thing before we get on to the training squad, because that is the main part of today's episode, and I know that we said we weren't going to keep dwelling on him, and I know that we keep coming back to it, but today it's less about what he said and more about what the latest on the Folau saga. I don't know if you've read this yet, Dan.
I have, mate, and I'm absolutely I think this is a bit disgusting.
So I'm sure most of you will already know, but for those that don't, so Israel Folau he's now got a GoFundMe page where he is asking for public support, financial support, to cover the cost of his legal battle with Rugby Australia. I mentioned last week, it doesn't sound to me like the most Christian thing, but aside from all of that, and there's plenty of people pointing that out, it's been. He's obviously got a lot of support from people who have the same sort of beliefs as him, who don't have the restrictions that he has in terms of why it's not okay for him to go around saying the things that he's been saying and why he's in the situation that he's in. But there's been an awful lot of negative press surrounding this, and
rightly so.
Well, and one in particular, I think it's had, I don't know, 50,000, 60,000 likes, maybe more. I can't remember exactly what the numbers are at. This is probably an old example. In fact, it's probably way more than that by now. This is a while back, but it was Drew Mitchell who said, "Yep. You're in a fight that you chose to be in after you broke the terms of your contract. The kids below are in a fight they never wanted to be in, and yet you think you deserve donations more than they do." And then what he's done is he's kind of posted 4 pictures. One of them is the Israel Folau Legal Action Fund, which is in this picture I'm looking at now, it was $250,000. It's now over $500,000. And the 4 pictures surrounding it, Princess Piper fighting neuroblastoma, $100,000 raised. Another kid who's fighting the same disease, $75,000 raised, $40,000 raised. Another one fighting a similar disease, $30,000 raised. And obviously the point was, you're not a poor man who is being put in a situation that you can't fight because of your personal circumstances. These kids didn't ask for what's happening to them, and if you're going to as a Christian man who wants to impart Christian values on the world, it just seems a bit odd to put yourself up against these people and say, look, my $10 million in the bank and my $5 million property portfolio, let's forget that for a minute. I need your help to pay the $300,000 fees, which apparently is what's been quoted as the likely cost of his legal fees, even though he's asked to raise $3 million. It's all very strange. And Drew Mitchell has had a huge amount of support for his reaction to it all. And the biggest thing is that a lot of people saying that, if Rugby Australia were to lose this battle, and I think the general consensus is they won't, because they do actually have a leg to stand on, because they're not trying to stop him from having his beliefs. They're simply saying that, there's a time and a place for sharing them, and, using your position as a member of our company, if you like, is not one of them.
Yeah.
It's pretty disgusting, to be honest.
Yeah, this is the whole thing just winds me up. So a few things here. Firstly, it just smacks of somebody who's thrown his toys out for him, acted like a complete prick, and because no one agrees with him, he's now throwing his toys out for him. He's like, right, no one agrees with me, so now everybody should be on my side. Like, he's just being a pathetic little boy, and now he's actually been quite vile with it. This is, of course, my opinion, but also, and I may be wrong here. If I'm wrong, then fair enough. I need to put my hands up. But as far as I'm aware, I've never known him to post a GoFundMe page for a Christian mission to go and help starving children in Africa, or he's never tried to raise money for people to do that. But as soon as it comes to him, he's like, well, hang on a minute, I'm already a multimillionaire. I don't want to lose that money, so why don't you guys give me money so I can unprick myself?
Yeah, it's and also I guess what's the impact if Rugby Australia were to lose, is what I was saying before I lost my train of thought. But if they were to lose this battle, I don't know how much money he would get, but let's say he got $10 million in damages, which is what I believe he's looking for. What's the impact of that on the sport and the careers that rely on Rugby Australia?
Well, that's it. He doesn't care. He couldn't give a shit. All he cares about is himself.
So,
which is, as far as I'm aware, not a huge Christian value.
And I think this is the big point, isn't it? But so I'm sure there'll be people with many different views on this. But I think, generally speaking, when you see this post from Drew Mitchell and you see like there are these people, it's hard to get behind the idea that this multimillionaire needs money more than these children who are dying.
Has he at least offered to pay back? Should he win, has he at least offered to pay back the people?
Well, I have no idea. I don't think so. I don't think that's how it works. I'd be inclined to say this should be more like a instead of a GoFundMe where you're basically just asking for handouts. Perhaps it should be a crowdfunding where you invest in the future. And if you therefore have strong beliefs that he's right and you believe that he's going to win, then you invest in what he's doing. And you earn a percentage back, it's like a business.
I'll give you 50% of the money if you give me 50% of the winnings.
Exactly.
Or winnings, whatever word it is. Yeah.
But I imagine that's not how it works. So it looks like he's going to get more money than his legal. He's basically going to make money off this, courtesy of the people that are donating, because he doesn't give money back. That's not how it works.
Oh my God.
He ends up with a fund, and he gets to spend that fund on his legal fees. So if his legal fees cost less than what he raised, which is what is being suggested, they reckon $300,000 is about as much as it would cost. The legal battle is going to cost him, and he's already raised $500,000. So I don't know if he just pockets the rest. Thanks very much.
Well, it's God. I hope he doesn't make a penny. And if you're Folau, someone who played rugby, at least you're helping the game out globally as well. Thanks for that, you bellend.
So yeah. Anyway, we brought the tone down. Now let's rise it back up, because the main thing we wanted to talk about today, and we've been waiting some time to start to get a feel for what the England squad is going to look like, is of course that the phase one, I guess, the first part of the England training squad has been announced. I think 29 players. Now, of course, anyone who was involved in the Premiership semis or finals can't be here at the moment because there's a required 5-week rest period. So, all the big names from Sarries, Exeter, Gloucester and Northampton, they're not involved in this yet. I believe they're due in at the end of next week.
That sounds right. I can't remember
right.
exact time.
That will then be an extra 2, because that will have been then 2 weeks. I think that's right. Anyway, so we should be hearing exactly who they will be. Although we probably don't need to wait to hear about that. But yeah, today, this week when it was announced, obviously it's given us a bit of insight into the way that he's thinking, and there's some interesting calls. It doesn't necessarily mean anything because we are talking about a training squad which is going to be almost cut in half for the World Cup. Not quite, but but yeah. Any first of all, before we get onto the question of those not included, any names that really kind of jump out to you as being, I really like that. That's exciting.
Don Brandt.
Nice.
I think he's had a great season. I mean, I know everyone went on about the Barbars game, and he played well, but that to me was just the sort of, the cherry on the top of the cake. I think his season's been great. I like the fact he's been involved. But as you said, and I think the main thing with this squad, because we haven't got the other names, the main thing in this squad is the omissions. I think they're the ones that are the key. But let's
talk about them. You're right. That's kind of really what creates the shape of this squad. And we had a long chat last week or maybe the week before about whether or not Dylan Hartley was going to be included. And he's not. He's not there. And from what I've read, it doesn't mean that he's definitely not part of the England setup. It is, in his case, it's a fitness issue. But it's making it very difficult, isn't it? He's not played since December.
It's going to be impossible for him to be involved now, right?
Well, this is what I'm saying. So they have said that he's not involved because he's not fit.
Yeah.
He's not fit to be involved. So there's still a kind of an outside chance. But yeah, I can't see it now. I think his World Cup hopes are dead.
Yeah, exactly, because I can't remember who the players are. I think George Cruz may even be one of them, but there's a couple of injured players who are going to camp so they can have treatment there and be monitored. Whereas
I don't know if it's so much though, and it's not. I don't think it's an injury. I think he's just not believed to be fit enough. I mean, I don't know what that means. Maybe it's look, you're fit to play according to the doctors, but we don't think you're fit enough to be involved. Therefore, it's not a case of you coming and sitting on the sidelines and recovering. You need to go and improve your fitness, and if you somehow manage to miraculously improve it in a way that makes us go, okay, hang on, then the door is not locked, but it is shut. I think is probably the.
So, yeah, I think the thing interesting about this, and we a couple of weeks back on the pod were saying, I think it was words from Haskell saying how integral he is to the squad as a leader, but. It's also, and we agreed with that. But a good point is, if he genuinely is not going to be capable of playing, you can't waste a spot on the squad for somebody who can't play.
100%.
And but it's also that I actually think that this is the right call, and I think it's done at the right time. Let's put an end to it now, so that it's not something that drags on and on. Will he? Won't he? I think it's quite good that they are now putting an end to it and saying, right, Dylan Hartley's not involved.
I mean, maybe what they need to do is just say that because of his situation, like, you don't necessarily want to shut the door or lock the door shut for anybody. But in the case of Dylan Hartley, the captaincy is the issue, isn't it? Because he's the captain, on paper. Co-captain. You kind of need to say we've not stripped him of it, because that sounds like it's a punishment. But the captaincy is no longer on the table. Even if he is involved, he won't be the captain because he hasn't been involved with the side for such a long period of time that we need our captain to be someone who's 100% good to go, kind of thing. So if you were to take that off the table, then I think it changes things, because then it becomes simply a case of they can say to him then, we're not saying no, but right now it is no, but there's still 2.5, 3 months for you to change your minds. That's on you.
I think behind closed doors there might have been I think it's almost out of respect for Dylan Hartley. I think behind closed doors, like you say, like you say, it's not stripping him of a captaincy. It sounds like a club I went to last night, but it's and some women look like Dylan Hartley in fairness, but it's saying, I think behind closed doors they might be saying, look, Dylan, we've given you every chance, but it's not happening. I think England might have, out of respect for him, they haven't necessarily said that out loud. And if a miracle happens, it happens. But I actually think that this has been probably dealt with in their minds.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I don't see how he comes back from it when it's not like we're in the middle of a season and he's about to start playing again and he's got matches to prove himself. He's not involved in the training camps. It's the off season. I mean, there's probably, I don't know, there's going to be a bit of pre-season time, but it's not looking likely, is it?
No.
I mean, the other two big. Okay, let's move on then, because the other three big omissions, both Quins, Danny Care and Chris Robshaw. Robshaw for me, not a massive surprise. I think the back row for England is looking so strong and so much strength and depth and there's so many options that it's kind of what we said a while back, which is that he might be a workhorse. He's not been involved for a while, and there are people that have now kind of superseded him. World Cup aside. So that's not a huge surprise to me. Danny Care, on the other hand, I think is a big surprise, or a bit of a surprise. And I think the big thing here is that between them, you're looking at about 250, 300 caps.
That's what, between Care and between the four of them,
between Hartley, Care, Robshaw, and I mean Nathan Hughes doesn't have that many, but Nathan Hughes as well. But yeah, particularly Robshaw, Care, and Hartley. They are three of the most capped players previously in the England setup. So there's a lot of experience. I guess what I'm saying is this a bit of a gamble? You're clearly going for kind of youth and Premiership form, and in some cases, form in an England shirt, but not. This isn't a World Cup yet. It's about to be, and there's been a lot of talk about the kind of the need for experience.
So the biggest surprise for me with that, like I say, is for Danny Care, in instance. Now, and the reason this is such a big surprise. So Dan Robson, I think Dan Robson 100% deserved his call up to the England squad. The problem is, when he was called up, he wasn't used. And that surprised me. And now, obviously through no fault of his own, and I'm really glad that he's coming back because he had a horrific injury. And it's awesome that he's coming back. And I think Dan Robson actually deserves a place within that squad. But if you're not using him, bearing in mind that Danny Care's been playing really well, and if I'm honest, I probably still have Danny Care slightly above Dan Robson, personally. It just seems... I'm quite surprised by the Danny Care one. Having Spencer in the squad, I completely get. And who's the other scrum half? It's the Gloucester guy, isn't it? Whose name escapes me. Who's played well. So Danny Care omission isn't. It's not as ridiculous as perhaps you look at some of the Danny Cipriani omissions where you think that's absolutely ridiculous. But to me, that still is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna. We assume he's gonna take. You would think 3 scrum halves, because otherwise,
I would have thought so.
If you only take 2, you are committing them to being involved in every single game.
Yeah.
With no backup, so you've got to take 3 scrum halves. So Ben Youngs is clearly favourite.
Numero uno.
Ben Spencer, I completely get because apart from anything else, if you've got Owen Farrell at fly half, which clearly is Eddie's first choice for his 10, then Ben Spencer spends the season, or a lot of the season, playing inside him. Richard Wigglesworth, it looks like he's been sort of ruled out. And, obviously he's the other one that has experience of playing with Farrell. So if you've not got Wiggy, then Spencer, makes sense. And, I get it. If the trouble is that so often when those changes get rolled out kind of on the 60-minute mark-ish, Farrell's not a 10 anymore. He moves to 12.
Yeah, I mean, But will they necessarily move him to 12? I don't know.
So if he goes to 12, and let's say for the sake of argument, Ford goes to 10,
yeah.
But you take Ben Youngs off because he's going to, they're swapping him out as well. So suddenly it's like, well, Ben Youngs is used to playing with Ford. One's coming on, one's going off. Spencer's used to playing with Farrell. One's moving to inside centre while the other one comes on. I don't know. To me, that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense.
There's a lot of speculation there because I'm not convinced. I know we've seen it before. I'm not convinced Eddie would be looking necessarily at taking Farrell off or moving Farrell to 12 to bring on Ford. I don't know that's necessarity of the game plan.
We don't know. We've seen him do it a lot, though, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, and I get your point there completely. It does. That is true, because you'd think Ford and Youngs would be a good partnership, and Farrell Spencer. But and Dan Robson, should he hopefully, and I assume he must be sort of fully fit now, and hopefully he's ready. I hope he's given him a chance, because Dan Robson can do great things, but I hope he's given the opportunity to do that. Yeah. Unlike what he had in the Six Nations, where it's like, Dan Robson, we brought you here. We'll give you 6 minutes in total.
Yeah, I mean, we're also assuming that Ben Spencer will be called up in a week's time.
I thought they said he had.
Well, he's not, because he's obviously Sarries. He's not been called up yet. We're just assuming that he'll be the third scrum half, because at the moment you've got Ben Youngs and Dan Robson both currently with the training squad, and they're the only two scrum halves, I believe.
No, there was it was the guy from Gloucester.
There are no Gloucester players currently in the backs. But actually, no, we wouldn't. Well, again, we wouldn't know, would we?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. But Danny Care, ignoring that, but Danny Care one, I found a bit of a surprise. Nathan Hughes, I'm surprised because I thought Eddie Jones would go with him, but I'm glad he hasn't, because I don't think Nathan Hughes has earned that spot.
I agree. Well, and it's an interesting one again, because he's always been the sort of Eddie Jones's go-to like-for-like replacement for Billy. But Mark Wilson came on the scene. He's kind of earned his number 6 shirt. Well, not kind of. He has. He's put his name on that number 6 shirt. But he came on the scene playing number 8 and made a name for himself, if you like, in an England shirt, playing at number 8. So I wonder whether Eddie is looking at Mark Wilson as potential number 8 cover and thinking, I'd rather have more options kind of across the back row, where I know that there are people outside of Billy who can cover 8, rather than taking a specialist 8 that can't really cover anywhere else in the back row.
Well, do you think maybe Sam Simmons could be in the rankings? In for a shout. I know we've not seen him much, but he's had a few games for Exeter, albeit from the bench. Or, which I'd love, Matt Kovacic. Yeah,
possibly. I'm trying to think who else has he got in. This is when I should have done a bit more research before this episode. Obviously, we've got.
Yeah, sorry, Karen.
Well, we've got Brad Shields, Sam Underhill, Mark Wilson,
Tom Curry.
Tom Curry, sorry, yeah. Who else am I missing? Who else am I missing?
Well, in the current, who's currently been named?
No, well, it currently been named, and those that we know are going to be.
So you've got Billy, obviously.
Yeah, number 8.
And sorry, where are you looking at Marrow? Because Marrow's been playing quite a lot at 6. I hope he doesn't look there. But
Marrow's going to go as a second row, but giving him options, I think.
But yeah, I think the key's there. I hope the Exeter boys are involved. Be that Sam Simmons, be that Matt Kovacic, be that our old favourite Donny Armand.
Just can't see that happening. There's just been no mention of it. There's not even been like a kind of debate about his involvement in the England setup. Whereas at least with Cipriani, we know that there's been that sort of will he, won't he, what does he need to do? I don't know. I just don't think that Don Armand's going to get his shot.
No, I don't. I am starting to get a bit excited that Kovacic might though.
Do you think?
I hope so. I think Kovacic has been absolutely awesome, and I'd love to see him involved. If not, I'd love to see Sam Simmons involved, because I think Eddie to me has shown a slightly different form of 8. Because to me, Nathan Hughes is a big traffic ball carrier in theory. You've got Billy for that, which you use. I mean, Sam Simmons and Matt Kovacic is okay at that, but you've got like Don Brandt as Simmons. who are just that bit more agile, a bit more sort of athletic and quick. And I wonder whether Eddie wants that as a backup.
Possibly. So before we get into this next part, you might have some information that would perhaps explain it. But I want to talk about, why is Mike Brown involved?
I don't have information that might explain it.
You don't? I thought you had some information about the latest on Jack Noel.
Oh, so no. I've got so they've said Jack Noel has been said for his injury. So he's had his surgery, and Jack Noel has been said. Exeter have said there's no reason they don't think he'd be involved in the World Cup. Now, I don't think he'd be involved until the latter stages
of the warm-ups, not the
warm-ups, of course, yeah, of the warm-ups, because of the time to recover. To me, why is Mike Brown involved? Because Mike Brown is a good player, but also perhaps because if you look at some of the players there now with injury, maybe Mike Brown adds that bit of sort of mentoring side.
Are you talking about purely for training?
For the training camp, I don't believe Mike Brown will be in the final World Cup squad.
Well, you've got Anthony Watson is in the training camp. You've got Elliot Daly, obviously, who's currently the first choice fullback. You've got Chris Ashton, who is a winger but can play fullback. Did it for the Barbars against England and helped take England apart.
I can't imagine him being considered as a fullback for the World Cup squad.
Well, no, but I'm just thinking more in terms of the need for additional specialists.
Yeah.
The point is, you've got Chris Ashton, who can cover that position. You've got Jack Noel, who's a winger, but who plays fullback most of the time for Exeter and can certainly cover that position. You've then got Anthony Watson, as I say, who previously was the go-to fullback, and you've got Elliot Daly, who's the current go-to fullback. So without Mike Brown, you've already got 4 guys right there. But
Eddie also sees Mike Brown as a winger, and I wonder if that's how he's looking at him.
But that doesn't answer anything, because it's the same problem, isn't it? Because then you got.
Well, no, I agree.
Chris Ashton is a winger. Joe Cokanasiga is a winger. Johnny Mays is a winger. Who have I missed?
He's a Fruit Loop, but he's a winger. I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing. I think Mike Brown might be there, maybe positional experience to help some of the others. Mike Brown might just be there because Eddie still sees him as his safest pair of hands. I genuinely don't know. I'm not, because of who else is involved, it doesn't bother me. What will bother me is if he takes a spot of a Cokanasiga or if he takes a spot of a Watson or something. That's when the anger levels start to rise.
I see. Okay, well, so the next one that I think sends a bit of a message. We said it was a massive outside chance, but Marcus Smith is there. He's in the training squad. We also kind of said we'd quite like to see him in the training squad. It could be a good experience. But again, you've got Ford, you've got Farrell, both 10s. Marcus Smith is a 10, and assuming that Cipriani gets the call up at the end of the week.
Has this ruled Cipriani out?
Well, this is what I'm wondering. I mean, I'd be surprised because of the way that Cipriani was told he was unavailable for the Barbars game.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know how we don't know that we don't know how that conversation went, and we don't know the specifics of him being told, ruled out of playing for the Barbars. But yeah, based on our assumption that it ultimately came from Eddie Jones, you've got to assume that Eddie's at least going to have him in the training camp, and suddenly you've got 4 fly halves involved. Now I don't know whether because what Eddie has done in the past is he's sent people home. So I don't know whether he's thought, you know what, we've got a couple of weeks where we're going to be a bit short on certain players, particularly if you want to create 2 teams, you need a second fly half in training. So maybe it's like bring Marcus Smith in now. George Ford's the other guy. They're there. They can do their thing. It's a good bit of experience for Marcus Smith over the next couple of weeks. But next week when we bring in the big guns, we send him home and say thanks very much. Not this year. And maybe he's already been told that.
And actually, that's a really valid point. And that could well be the case, because you can't have George Ford running every move in every training session, can you?
No. And do you think, therefore, though, that's a potentially likely scenario for someone like an Alex Dombrandt, who, as much as we, liked seeing what he did, and we love the fact that a year ago he was at uni getting pissed, the reality is that Eddie's probably it's probably the same sort of scenario. I mean, Eddie Jones is definitely the kind of guy that could take us by surprise and just throw in this guy as a complete wild card. but it is a Rugby World Cup, and is it the time for this sort of thing? There's plenty of opportunities to give him his shot, and he hasn't really. He's currently uncapped. I don't know. I think having uncapped people involved in the England World Cup training squad to me seems a bit weird.
It doesn't seem weird to me based upon how Don Brandt's played. If that player is going to be the most impactful and be the best value, which I think Don Brandt arguably could be. But you're right. The scenario you suggested, I have no idea if there's any background to it, but that actually makes sense to me, and that could well be what's going on.
Because, we should have probably run the numbers and worked out how many guys we think are almost definitely going to be called up next week.
Well, that's the thing. We'll just never know.
Well, we will. We'll know next week.
Yeah, well, okay. Touché. I mean, you're such a dick. You're such a villain. I mean, as in, we don't know with Eddie. He's unpredictable. Just know what I'm saying.
Okay, sorry, mate. Sorry. Okay, fine. I mean, I'm trying to encourage us to discuss possibilities. So
I know you are, and now I just want to go against everything you do.
I appreciate that the if we're just being straight up honest, the answer to every one of these questions is we don't know. That's sort of the point of doing this. I've run out of things to talk about because we just don't know, Dan.
So sorry. I'll ask your question again. No, I'll try and be more.
I don't even remember what the question was now.
Oh, it must have been great.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
It was. So, you were saying about running the numbers. You were saying about we could look who's potentially going to be involved.
With the view to kind of saying how many of the guys that have been called up into this 29-man training squad are going to be sent away, because usually these training squads are somewhere in the sort of low 40s, aren't they? Total numbers.
I think so.
So if we said 43?
Yeah, if we say that, and then I think you take 31 to a World Cup.
And then you reduce it further later. So that means that... So the question is, are there 14 guys between Sarries, Exeter, Gloucester and Northampton that will get called up at the end of the week? And if there's more than that, that's how many of the people who are currently here are likely to be sent away in a week's time. And then obviously we then need to take that 43 or whatever it's going to be and whittle that down, as you say, to 31 for the World Cup.
That easily will be, because one of the things we're saying about medical, actually at the moment, Cruz and Vunipola are in the England camp at the moment for medical treatment. Saracens themselves will have about 7 players who are going to be called up. Yep. And then between the other 3, you've easily got another 7.
And presumably Noel will be in the England camp for recovery as well.
I don't know, because
they'll want him, unless he's been ruled out, surely they're going to want him there from a sort of tactical perspective for all the parts of the training camp that aren't physical.
But I think I kind of get that, but I think Jack Nell might be, if he's not, I wouldn't be overly worried, because I think he'd be so much earlier in his treatment than Mako and George Cruz would be. But I suspect if Jack Nell's not called up immediately, he will be perhaps, in another few weeks' time. But it might be at the moment, all he can do at the moment is rest. So there's no point calling him up to rest. He might as well be at home.
Rest. I suppose if he's in that stage of recovery where, it is a case of you need to be doing nothing and sitting with your feet up, then for sure. However, and it's often the case with professional injury recovery, it's what we need the pod doc for, isn't it? Well, I think he did talk about this when we did have him on. It's more about the kind of the physical recovery and having those specialists around, and the amount of money that gets spent on all the technology that helps recover quicker. Not ice baths. That would be a very Jurassic version of.
And I can't imagine that's the most cost intensive.
No. But instead of that, they have like rooms that you go in, sub-zero kind of recovery room chambers
and like oxygen chambers.
Yeah, all this kind of stuff. So and no doubt they've got all of those facilities at Penny Hill Park. And that's one of the reasons why the likes of Cruz and Mako are there, is because actually they've got the best people, and they've got the team of the sort of physio specialists and recovery specialists and God knows what other kind of specialists there, kind of ensuring that they're they're probably their training is probably as intense as everyone else's. It's just that it's purely recovery based training.
Yeah. It could be. So, and actually, whilst we're on that, just to change things a bit, The Joe Marler instance. The reason we're saying that because I remember when he broke his leg and he drank something like 8 gallons of full fat milk a day or something just to fix it. But Joe Marler.
I mean, that's the reason. That's the reason why I've been eating so much chocolate recently.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. And the fry ups at the weekend. It's just I heard it was good.
I'm not sure how much milk's in the fry ups.
No. I heard that fry ups are good for recovery as well.
Mate, fry ups are amazing for recovery, and so are chicken doner wraps, which I'm going to go and get one shortly. Apparently, they're awesome for recovery.
Nice.
But it's So on that Joe Marler bit, so he's not been included, which fair enough. He's ruled himself out, but apparently it's like, but he's not been discounted yet. Well, if he's not been discounted, why would you not include him?
Yeah, well, I think so. One of the reasons I think they've not included him at this stage is because, and he was the first to say it, he ruled himself out, and there are great players who have made themselves available. Not only made themselves available, but have done incredibly well to earn their places in the England setup. And he kind of said it would be a bit of a joke if someone like me came along and basically just said, I've been retired for 6 months because I didn't fancy all the hard work. But now I fancy a World Cup, so I'm just going to walk back in again. So I wonder whether there's an element of he is coming back in, but they need it to come at he needs to be called up at a later stage, kind of almost so they've given England time to go, well, we just feel like even though he's not been involved, he would still add more value than the person he's going to replace. Unless it's a case of, it's simply a case of they want him ready because although they're hoping Mako's going to be fit, if at the last minute it's decided he's not, then they feel like they can bring in Joe as a like-for-like replacement. But yeah, I read it too. He is apparently still in the elite England, whatever
squad,
whatever it's called. The elite.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't publish
squad,
it, so we don't actually know it, and I don't know therefore who knew this to write the article. Fake news, maybe. But yeah, apparently he is in the elite player squad, which is a bit bizarre anyway. Because that, to me, says you're not retired anymore from international rugby.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a strange one, but it'd be great to have him back.
I'd love to have Joe Marler back. Yeah. I think Joe Marler would add so much on and off the pitch.
They still need to take Haskell as like the mascot or something.
The Archbishop of the Archbishop of Banterbury, to have him as even
as the mascot.
Yeah, the guys,
but bring your boots.
And the guys switched on with the guy switched on with all his sort of health and all that side of stuff. So maybe he could go along as an assistant to the.
Just say, look, you come along. You're not there to play rugby, but bring your boots and your mouth guard. And you never know.
I'd like Haskell to be. He won't be, obviously.
Hopefully he'll be there anyway, just because he'll be like, it's the Rugby World Cup in Japan, and I used to play in Japan, so I'm going to go out there and support.
I suspect he'll be out there for TV. Like, all the TV stations are going to want him out there, aren't they? They're going to be like, oh, what's this pitch like? And Haskell will be like,
to be honest,
it's very grassy. And
the main reason I want him out there is for his social media posts, his videos of him winding up Farrell about being his best mate. They should just send him just to do that. Because on the Lions tour,
so angry
on the Lions tour, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
And probably the Australian tours. That's probably where it all started, wasn't it? Where he bossed it, and England whitewashed Australia.
Yeah, poor Farrell. You could just see his face drop as Haskell gets near him.
They need to find a way. Maybe we should start a GoFundMe page to fund. Well, I don't think we need to fund him. Actually, he's probably much like Mr. Folau. He's probably got plenty of cash to take himself. But
let's not compare Haskell to Folau. Haskell's a legend.
Let's start a GoFundMe page to send the England rugby pod to Japan. Now, there's an idea.
There's an idea, and we are pricks as well. So if another prick can get a lot of money, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to.
Exactly. I won't waste anyone's time by putting out a request for it, but I will put out a request to say, guys, those of you that particularly that keep tuning in, we really appreciate it. If you get the opportunity, as I always say, please head over to iTunes, rate us, review us. Let us know what you think. You can reach out to us if you've got any questions or any feedback at England Rugby Pod on social media or englandrugbypod@gmail.com. We're the original England Rugby Pod. None of that O2 rubbish calling themselves the English Rugby Pod or whatever it is they say. It's all right here. Fans talking the way that fans should talk, which is with very thick rose-tinted glasses. And what better time than just before, and of course during a World Cup. So
very well said.
Dan, is there anything else that you would like to add today, or shall we leave these lovely people to get on with the rest of their weekends?
I think we can leave. I think we can leave it for today, and next week we'll come back bigger and stronger as always. Where did I copy that from? I can't remember.
No idea. Something from Love Island, probably.
Guys,
it is what it is. We'll catch you next week.
Cheers.